If you are any one of the three insecure attachment styles, anxious attachment style, fearful avoidant, dismissive avoidant, you probably suck at communication, quite honestly, and it is not your fault. Okay, I say that with the most due respect. If you know anything about me on this channel, you know that I was a fearful avoidant attachment style. It's a huge part of why I do this work that I've been doing here for the last decade and a half, teaching about these things and working with people in this context. And I was a terrible communicator. Terrible. I was probably as tough as it gets when it comes to communication. So I say that with the most empathy, the least judgment. When you learn how to have hard conversations, it will change your life. So what I'm going to take you through is 4 main steps that you can follow that will help you essentially audit, first of all, where you are when it comes to communication and reframe your communication to take it from something that you might as well not even be doing if you're doing it this wrong into something that makes so much sense to do. My goal is that for you, by the end of this video, you're going to walk away from this being like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize my entire life I was communicating so poorly because I had learned such few skills when it comes to communication that there was no point in even bothering. And now I know exactly some really simple steps that I can start taking that will go such a long way to actually allowing me to get seen, to get heard, to get connected, to get understood in a meaningful way to the people around me. And I'll tell you, as somebody who did this work firsthand in my own life, I don't just teach about this. I really have done a lot of these steps and tools that I share with you. In my own life, when I actually learned how to communicate properly, one of the biggest things that happened to me is I was like, oh my gosh, my needs get met by people around me. People I felt so much more deeply cared about and understood and seen. And it was such a beautiful and honestly really healing experience for me as a person. So I can't wait to share this with you. And I'm so glad that you're here. Let's start by going through these 4 overarching steps. The first step is such a simple step, but it goes such a long way, and it is called positive framing. This step, when we get it wrong, I really feel like, as somebody who's worked with tens of thousands of people through our programs online, I used to run a very busy client practice for years, working with people one-to-one or in couples. And truly, if we don't get this first step right, there's almost no point in communicating. I used to have people come in back when I was running my practice, and they would come in and they would say, Thais, my husband never listens to me. I've tried everything. Or Thais, my wife never listens to me. I've tried everything. My partner never listens to me. And at first, the very first year I worked with people, I would be like, oh no, that's horrible. That's terrible. Their partner's not a good listener. And then after a year or two of working with people, I realized, wait, when somebody says that to me, I now know that they're just a really bad communicator, and that's a much, much greater likelihood or scenario than that their partner is a bad listener. I stopped after the first year or two of even bothering to listen to that, and I would get into like, how do we actually do this properly? So what is positive framing as our first of 4 pillars of proper communication? Positive framing is the difference between saying, you don't care about me, you never spend any time with me, you don't love me, versus saying, hey, I'm feeling disconnected and I want to spend more quality time together. That looks like us planning a fun date night this weekend on Saturday at 5 p.m. When you positively frame, when you say what you do need instead of what you don't need, people can actually hear you. When you just say a criticism and what's not happening, there's this whole thing behind every criticism is a need, and it's so true, but most people will never hear your need when you're criticizing them. All of our own conditioning with what criticism is when you were criticized as a child, you were then punished. So we are wired deeply, we are conditioned deeply to hear somebody criticize and feel like we have to defend ourselves so we can prevent the punishment. That causes you to never be able to hear people when they criticize you. And then sadly, somebody thinks they're communicating, and there's no communication happening when you're criticizing somebody. Okay, so first step is positively framing. I literally get people to practice this exercise in our programs. I'm like, say the last time you tried to communicate, say what you criticized, instead convert it into a need. And I literally get people to sit down and go through like 10, 15 scenarios of times they were in an argument or disagreement or felt upset about something. And I get them to take how they frame something, what they criticize, and I'm like, convert it into a need, convert it into a need, convert it into a need. It is such a useful skill and tool to develop. And again, let's say some common themes here. You're like, you don't text enough. You're not consistent enough. Hey, I'm needing more consistency when it comes to texting in our relationship. That looks like ABC. If somebody's like, you're not present enough, you don't ever listen to me. Okay. Hey, I need you to be more present with me. That looks like on date night when we spend time together, our phones are away. I want you to just practice converting into a need, converting into a need. For the first time in your life, when you do the first step, this first step, you'll be like, oh my gosh, people hear me. People actually do care about my needs. Oh my gosh, people do want to listen to me. It's literally life changing. Okay. That's step one. Step two, I kind of did this with number one as I was saying it because I can't do it properly without putting them together, but I'm going to break the step two down. You have to paint a picture for what the need looks like. You have to. If you don't, you can say, oh, I need more quality time together. And your partner will be like, cool, let's spend 15 minutes together right now. And you needed a 2 hour long date night once a week. Or you can say, oh, I need support. And your partner's like, cool, I'm going to do the dishes. And you needed them to give you a hug or tell them, or for them to tell you that they love you. When we don't paint a picture, because we all have different conditioning, what ends up happening instead is you don't paint a picture and people don't know what you're actually needing. And so they don't meet it. And then you're left feeling like I tried to communicate and I tried to say it in the positive, but unless you're specific and you paint a picture for what it looks like, it will also fall on deaf ears. So we're going to put these first two steps together. Every time, I want you to think of a time you were in an argument or a disagreement, and I want you to positively frame, paint a picture for what it looks like. Okay, I'm going to give you another scenario. Maybe you need your partner to be more open with you and vulnerable with you. You might say, instead of saying, you never open up, you don't say anything, I don't even know who you are. Instead of saying something like that, you're going to say, hey, I really appreciate vulnerability in a relationship. That looks like you sharing a little bit more about what you need or what you're feeling sometimes. Can we practice doing a weekly check-in where we talk about those things? Now it became very clear. We positively framed, we gave a very specific actionable step or strategy for how to get that need met. Okay, so this is those first two, if you did nothing else, will change your life. I just want to jump in here and let you know that we are doing a 14-day free trial to the All Access Membership Pass at PDS, which means you get access to literally everything inside of the school. And this includes the 4 live webinars I do with our students every single week. And on top of that, you get access to all of our different courses. We have over 55 different courses on relationships, communication, boundaries, emotional mastery, guilt and shame, learning your needs, so many different facets that are really important to master our lives and feel really good about our lives going forward. And last but not least, there's a daily community event. We have trained facilitators and coaches who are in there doing that work, showing up to support you on your journey every single day. Please join me on the other side. Come check it out. See if it's a fit for you. I'd love to see you there. Go ahead and sign up by clicking the link in the description box below. Okay, last two pieces. If you are communicating with somebody difficult or who's sensitive to hearing your needs, you can start out by sandwiching. So you can say something positive in advance and wrap with something positive too. Sometimes the most sensitive to hearing communication are dismissive avoidants and sometimes even fearful avoidants. But anxious attachment styles have their own sensitivities too, a little bit less so to hearing somebody communicate to them. But let's just say for example that you're trying to communicate to an anxious person and you're trying to say, hey, I need a little bit of time to spend with my friends. I'm going to go away for a weekend to a cottage to hang out with them. Sandwiching looks like you basically starting with something that debunks their core wounds in advance. Okay, so we talk a lot about this in our programs, how to communicate around people's core wounds to make communication go more smoothly. So if an anxious attachment style has the core wound around feeling abandoned, you want to start by speaking into how you're going to stay instead of leave them. Okay, and let's say you want to go spend some quality time with friends, you want to go off to spend the weekend, hang out with friends and catch up with them. You're going to start by speaking into the opposite of the wound and then doing those next two steps. So you might say something like, hey, I love you. I really care about this relationship and I feel like we're growing and doing so well together and I cherish that. You don't even have to make it that long. You can just say like a couple of affirming things. And then you might say, and I'm also who really cherishes spending some time with friends. I'm going to have a girls' weekend at the end of the month. We're all going to hang out together for a weekend. And I would appreciate if you would make space for that for me. And I'll make sure that when I'm there, I check in with you, we FaceTime, and I can't wait to see you when I get back. So what you're doing is you're sharing your need, you're sharing what it looks like, you're like positively framing, painting the picture, but you're sandwiching it with starting by saying something positive about how you're not leaving and ending with something positive where you're also not abandoning them. This increases the chances of you being heard so dramatically in the relationships around you, okay? Because now somebody can't even get their wound triggered. It's very hard for their wounds or fears in a relationship to even be triggered. And so all they're left with is your positive expression of your need and you painting a picture. Now, the very last thing that I will say at a high level is that a good communicator sees their needs through. If you do this and it's going well and everything's great for 3 months, but then something falls off in terms of communication or in terms of the relationship, it doesn't mean that you should fall off with communicating. It shouldn't be that, oh, I communicated once, they should remember forever. No. True communicators embody communication. They communicate regularly, they communicate consistently, and they show up that way with everybody in their life around them. And that is truly what gets them heard and seen and connected and understood, and is what makes somebody a securely attached person. Okay, it's a huge part of it. It's one of our major pillars to becoming securely attached. So check in, score yourself from 1 to 4. 0 out of 4 being I communicate in none of those ways. I negatively frame, I'm not specific or clear. I don't see something positive at the start or end, and I don't see my needs through. And 4 being I do all of those. I do those regularly, and I want to hear your score in the chat, and then you'll know exactly which pillar to focus in on the most, maybe multiple of them. And then you can see just how much your life absolutely transforms, how much your relationships deepen, how much better connection is, how much more you feel seen and heard and understood by people around you when you do show up in that way. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.